Welcome to our channel. The ocean stretched endlessly before me, painted in shades of turquoise and gold. I stood on the balcony of my rental apartment, coffee growing cold in my hands, wondering what the hell I was doing here. Sigh and hers alone, 27 years old, and I'd finally done it. I'd booked the solo trip, the one everyone said would change my life after my breakup, the one my therapist gently suggested when I admitted I hadn't felt like myself in years. But standing there, watching couples walk hand in hand along the cliff paths below, I felt more alone than ever. My name is Chris, and this is the story of how I met a stranger on vacation and discovered something and never expected, something that would change everything. The first time I saw him, I wasn't looking for love, I was looking for the bathroom. The seaside Tivra was packed with tourists, all golden-skinned and laughing, drinking wine in the late afternoon sun. I'd been wandering Oja's narrow streets for hours, camera around my neck, pretending I was having the time of my life. I pushed through the beaded curtain at the back of the restaurant and nearly collided with him. Whoa, his hands caught my shoulders, steadying me. You okay? I looked up and forgot how to breathe. He had dark curly hair that fell just above his eyes, sun-kissed skin, and a smile that made my heart stutter. He wore a simple white linen shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms that made my mouth dry. Yes, sorry, bathroom, I managed. His smile widened. American guilty. I felt my cheeks flush. You too, Boston. He gestured down the hallway. Bathrooms that way, but fair warning, the lock's broken. Got to hold the door. Great, I muttered. He laughed. The sound was warm and genuine. I'm Jack, by the way. Chris. He stood there for a moment too long. His hands were still on my shoulders. I could feel the warmth of them through my shirt. His eyes were brown. I realized deep brown with flecks of gold. Well, he said softly, dropping his hands. Enjoy Santorini, Chris. He brushed past me and I caught the scent of sunscreen and something citrusy. My heart was racing. I didn't know then that this chance encounter would lead to the most intense week of my life, that Jack would become the stranger I couldn't stop thinking about, the person who would make me question everything I thought I knew about love and connection. I didn't expect to see him again, and Santorini is small, but not that small, and yet the universe had other plans. The next morning decided to hike from Fra to Oja. The trail hugged the caldera, offering views that belonged on postcards. I started early, hopping to beat the heat and the crowds. I was about halfway when I heard someone behind me. We've got to stop meeting like this. I turned. Jack jogged up beside me, slightly out of breath, backpack slung over one shoulder. He wore running shorts and a tank top that showed off shoulders. I definitely noticed. Are you following me? I asked, trying to sound playful instead of desperately hopeful. Maybe grinned. Or maybe you're following me. I was here first. Fair point. He fell into step beside me. Mind if I join you? Hiking alone is boring. My heart did a little flip. Sure. We walked in comfortable silence for a few minutes. The sun climbed higher, turning the white buildings of distant villages into blazing jewels. The sea sparkled below us, impossibly blue. So Jack said, eventually, solo trip, how'd you guess? Takes 1 2. No one smiled, but there was something sad in it, plus you have that look. What look? The one that says you're running from something. He glanced at me, or maybe running towards something. Haven't figured out which yet. I swallowed hard. This stranger saw right through me. Breakup, I admitted. 6 months ago, everyone said I needed to find myself. Jack nodded slowly. Me too. Well, not a breakup, more like a wake-up call. I spent 5 years in a job I hated, in a city I didn't love, dating people I didn't really connect with. Woke up on my 29th birthday and realized I was living someone else's life. So you came to Greece, so I came to Greece. He laughed. Quit my job, sold half my stuff, bought a one-way ticket. Figured I'd figure it out as I go. I stared at him. That's terrifying. Yeah, his eyes met mine. It really is. Something passed between us then. Understanding, maybe recognition. Like we were both standing at the edge of something new, scared but hopeful. Want to grab lunch when we get to OA? He asked. I know a place. Incredible view. Terrible Wi-Fi. I smiled. Sounds perfect. The restaurant he chose was tucked away from the main tourist drag. Tiny tables spilled onto a terrace. Overlooking the caldera, we ordered Greek salads and fresh fish, cold beers that sweated in the afternoon heat. We talked for 3 hours. Jack told me about growing up in Boston, the pressure to follow his father and to finance, the slow realization that he was suffocating under expectations that were never his own. He talked about coming out to his family at 23, the awkward acceptance, the way they still introduced him at gatherings as if his sexuality was a footnote they preferred to forget. I told him about my ex, how we'd met in college, dated for 4 years, talked about marriage and kids and a house in the suburbs, how I'd slowly realized I was performing a version of myself that felt safe but not real, how ending it had felt like both failure and freedom. You regret it? Jack asked softly. Ending it? No, I picked at the label on my beer, but I regret losing myself in it. I spent so long being what he needed that I forgot what I wanted. Jack reached across the table. His fingers brushed mine barely a touch. So what do you want, Chris? I looked at him, at the way the sun caught in his hair, at the genuine curiosity in his eyes, at the easy smile that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't in years. I'm still figuring that out, I whispered. His fingers lingered on mine for just a moment longer, then he pulled back, but the warmth remained. Well, he said, his voice a little rough, maybe we can figure it out together. I mean, while you're here, my heart raced. I'd like that. We spent the next 3 days together. It wasn't planned. We'd exchange numbers, make casual plans to meet for coffee or watch the sunset, and then those hours would stretch into entire days, days filled with laughter and conversation and moments that felt suspended in time. Jack showed me hidden beaches where we swam in water so clear we could see our feet on the sandy bottom. We rented TVs and got delightfully lost on dirt roads that wound through vineyards and tiny villages. We stayed up late on my balcony drinking wine and talking about everything and nothing, watching the stars wheel overhead, and slowly something was building between us. It was in the way he'd touch my arm when making a point, his fingers lingering just a second too long. The way our knees would brush under restaurant tables and neither of us would move away, the way he'd look at me sometimes when he thought I wasn't watching with an expression that made my chest tight. We didn't talk about it, we didn't label it, but it was there, this tension, this possibility, this feeling that we were both standing at the edge of something beautiful and terrifying. On the fourth night, we went to a beach bar, the kind of place with sand floors and tiki torches where backpackers and locals mingled under strings of lights. A DJ played music that thumped through the warm air. Jack bought us shots of yuzu. We danced badly, laughing at ourselves and each other. The alcohol made everything softer, easier. I felt free in a way I hadn't in years. At some point, we ended up at the water's edge. The music was muffled behind us. Waves lapped at our feet, warm and gentle. "This is nice," Jack said. He stood close, our shoulders touching. "Yeah," I breathed. "Chris." He turned to face me. The moonlight caught his features, making him look almost unreal. "Can I ask you something?" My heart hammered. "Sure, are you feeling this too?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "Or am I going crazy?" I couldn't breathe. "I'm feeling it." He stepped closer. His hand came up, fingers brushing my jaw. "I haven't felt like this in I don't know. Maybe ever." "Me neither," I admitted. We stood there, caught in that moment. The space between us charged with possibility. I could feel the heat of him, smell the salt and sunscreen on his skin. His thumb traced my cheekbone. "I wanna kiss you," he whispered. Everything in me said yes. Everything in me wanted to close that distance, to feel his lips on mine, to give in to this connection that felt bigger than both of us, but something held me back. Fear maybe, or the ghost of my last relationship, or the knowledge that I had 3 days left in Greece, and then I'd go home and this would end. "Jack," I said softly, "I am scared." His hand dropped, but he didn't step back. "Of what?" "Of this being a vacation thing, of going home and realizing it wasn't real. Of," I took a shaky breath, "of wanting something I can't have." It was quiet for a long moment, then he nodded. "Okay. Okay, we don't have to rush." His smile was sad but understanding. "We can just be for now, if that's what you need." Relief and disappointment war in my chest. "Thank you." You took my hand, laced our fingers together. "Come on, let's walk." We walked the beach for hours, hands clasped, talking and laughing and existing in that space between friendship and something more. And it was enough. For now, it was enough. The next day, Jack suggested something unexpected. "There's a hot ring spa," he said, "over breakfast. Natural thermal pools, supposed to be incredible. Want to go?" I hesitated. "Isn't that I mean, are we talking swimsuits or?" He laughed. "It's Greece, Chris. Pretty sure swimsuits are mandatory." He laughed. "It's Greece, Chris. Pretty sure swimsuits are mandatory, unless you're feeling adventurous." My cheeks burned. Swimsuits work. The spa was a 40-minute drive into the islands. Interior, whitewashed buildings clustered around steaming pools fed by volcanic springs. The air smelled of minerals and eucalyptus. We changed in separate rooms and met at the main pool. Jack wore simple black swim trunks. I tried not to stare at his chest, at the way water droplets clung to his skin as he slipped into the warm water. "Holy shit," he groaned. this is amazing. I lowered myself in beside him. The heat enveloped me immediately, soaking into muscles I didn't know were tense. Okay, this was a good idea. We floated. In comfortable silence, other guests came and went, a German couple, a group of Australian girls, a family with kids, who splashed and laughed, but mostly we had the pool to ourselves. Can I tell you something? Jack asked after a while. Always, he drifted closer. Our shoulders touched under the water. I came on this trip to figure out who I am, outside of everyone's expectations, outside of the life I thought I was supposed to have. I turned to look at him. His eyes were closed, face tilted toward the sun, and I prompted gently, and I think I'm starting to figure it out. He opened his eyes. Meeting you, it's made me realize what I was missing. Not just connection, but honest connection with someone who sees me, really sees me. My throat tightened. I see you, Jack. I know. His hand found mine under the water. You have no idea how rare that is. We stayed like that, hands clasped, the warm water cradling us. It felt intimate in a way that had nothing to do with our bare skin or the steam rising around us. It was emotional. Nakedness, vulnerability. This is what I meant, I said quietly, when you asked how we ended up here together. He smiled. Yeah, it's not about the physical stuff. It's about this, being completely ourselves with each other. No armor, no pretense. Naked, he said softly. Naked, I agreed. And in that moment, I understood the title that would later frame this story. I met a stranger on vacation, but how do we end up naked together? It wasn't about sex or scandal. It was about stripping away everything false until only truth remained. It was about two people finding each other in a place where nothing else mattered. That evening, we cooked dinner in my rental apartment, or rather, we attempted to cook dinner. Jack insisted he could make Greek moussaka for memory, and I insisted on helping despite having minimal cooking skills. We made a glorious mess, laughing as we chopped vegetables and argued about measurements. You can't just eyeball the beamel, I protested. Watch me, grinned, whisking with confident abandon. We ate on the balcony as the sun set, turning the sky into swirls of orange and pink. The moussaka was slightly burned on the edges and undursted, but it was the best meal I'd had in Greece. After dinner, we sprawled on the couch inside. Jack had found a bottle of local wine. We passed it back and forth, too lazy to get glasses. Can I ask you something? It turnabout's fair play. I took a breath. When you go home, whenever that is, what happens then? Jack was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. I don't have a home right now. Not really. Figuring it out as I go. That must be scary. Terrifying, he admitted, but also freeing. I can go anywhere, be anyone. I turned to face him. We were close on the couch, thighs touching, shoulders pressed together. Would you ever come to New York? His eyes widened slightly. You're in New York, I nodded. Brooklyn. Tiny apartment, too expensive. Great bagels. A slow smile spread across his face. I've always liked New York. My heart raced. Yeah. His hand found mine again. That seemed to be our thing. Now holding hands, bridging the space between us with touch that was intimate but safe. Are you asking me to visit Chris? Maybe. I swallowed hard. I leave in 2 days. I can't stand the thought of This ending, I'm going back to real life. And forgetting what this felt like, you. Won't forget, he said softly, I promise. You that, how do you know, 'cause this is real. He shifted, turning fully toward me. His free hand came up, cupping my face. What we have, it's not a vacation. Fling, no, it's not something we'll leave behind in Greece. I feel it in my bones. Chris, this matters. Tears pricked my eyes. It matters to me too. Then we figure it out. His thumb stroked my cheek. Long distance visits. Whatever it takes, I'm not ready to let you go. Promise me, I whispered. Promise you what? That this isn't just words. That when we leave here, you won't disappear. Jack leaned forward. His forehead touched mine. We breathed the same air, existed in the same space. Hearts beating in tandem. I promise. He said, I'm not going anywhere. And then he kissed me. It was soft at first, tentative. His lips brushed mine like a question, and I answered by pressing closer. My hand came up to tangle in his curls, and he made a small sound in his throat that sent electricity down my spine. We kissed like we'd been waiting our whole lives for this, like we were making up for all the time we'd spent holding back. His hands were in my hair, on my back, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Wow, I managed. Jack laughed, the sound slightly dazed. Yeah. Wow, we kissed again and again. Time lost meaning. We could have been on that couch for minutes or hours. All I knew was the taste of wine on his lips, the warmth of his body against mine, the feeling that I'd finally found something I didn't know I was looking for. Eventually, we pulled apart. Jack rested his head on my shoulder, and I wrapped my arms around him. We sat like that, tangled together, listening to the distant sound of waves. Stay with me tonight, I whispered. He lifted his head. Chris, just asleep. I don't want to be alone. I want to wake up and know this was real. His expression softened. Okay, yes. We moved to the bedroom, changed into sleep clothes, climbed under the sheets like it was the most natural thing in the world. Jack pulled me against him, my back to his chest, his arm around my waist. This okay, he murmured into my hair. Perfect, I breathed. I fell asleep too. The rhythm of his breathing, feeling safer and more content than I had in years. And when I woke in the morning, he was still there. My last full day in Santorini arrived too quickly. Jack and I didn't waste a moment, packed a picnic, and hiked to a secluded beach, swam in the crystal clear our water, floating on our backs, and staring at the cloudless sky. We made love with our words, our touches, the way we looked at each other, like we were both afraid this was a dream. At sunset, we climbed to the highest point in Noya. The village spread below us, white and blue and glowing in the golden light. We'll want tomorrow to come, I said quietly. He squeezed my hand. I know, we said we'd figure it out, but I'm scared of what that real life will get in the way. I will try long distance, and it'll be too hard, and I'll lose you before I really get to have you. Jack turned to face me fully. Behind him, the sun slipped toward the horizon, painting everything in shades of fire and gold. Chris, he said firmly, look at me. I met his eyes. I'm falling in love with you. He said, I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life. So tomorrow you get on that plane, and I'll keep traveling. And in a month, maybe two, I'll come to New York and we'll figure this out. Together, you're falling in love with me. My voice cracked. Yeah, he smiled. And it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I really am. I'm falling in love with you too, I whispered. He kissed me then, kissed me while the sun set behind us and tourists cheered and cameras clicked. Kissed me like we had all the time in the world, like this was just the beginning. The airport felt surreal. Jack insisted on driving me, even though it meant saying goodbye at departures instead of in the privacy of my apartment. We pulled up to the curb, and suddenly it was too fast, too soon. We stood outside the car, my suitcase between us like a barrier. So Jack said, so I echoed. We stared at each other. I memorized his face, the way his hair fell, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the exact shade of his eyes in the morning light. This isn't goodbye, he said firmly. This is see you soon. See you soon, I repeated. He pulled me into a hug. I buried my face in his neck, breathing him in, trying to hold on to this moment. I mean it, he whispered. Every promise, every word. I'm not letting you go. I'm holding you to that. We kissed one last time, soft and sweet and tinged with sadness. When we pulled apart, there were tears on both our faces. Go, he said gently, before I drag you back to the car and kidnap you. I laughed through my tears. I'd let you, I know. He smiled. That's the problem. I grabbed my suitcase, started toward the terminal, turned back one last time. Jack stood by the car, hands in his pockets, watching me. He raised one hand in a wave. I waved back, and then I walked inside. The knock on my apartment door came at exactly 7:00 p.m. I'd been packing for an hour, checking my phone, straightening things that didn't need straightening. My roommate had tactfully disappeared for the evening, claiming plans she definitely didn't have. I opened the door. Jack stood in the hallway, backpack over one shoulder, looking tired and nervous and perfect. Hi, he said, and I breathed. We stared at each other. 3 months of phone calls and video chats and texts had kept us connected, but nothing compared to this, to having him here in my space, real and solid and mine. Can I come in? He asked, a smile tugging at his lips. Oh my God, yes. I stepped back. Sorry, I'm nervous. Me too. He dropped his backpack and closed the distance between us. His hands came up to cup my face. But we don't need to be. It's still us, I agreed, and then we were kissing, and it felt like coming home, like no time had passed at all, like we'd never been apart. I got a job, he said, when we finally came up for air in Manhattan, start next month. My eyes widened. What? Tech startup, remote friendly, but they want me in the office a few days a week. He grinned, and I found a sublet in Williamsburg. If you want, if I want. I laughed, giddy and disbelieving. Jack, are you saying you're moving here? I'm saying I met a stranger on vacation. His thumbs stroked my cheeks, and I fell in love with him, and I'm not stupid enough to let that go. So yeah, I'm moving here if you'll have me. Kissed him again, deeper this time, pulling him closer, trying to convey everything I felt through touch alone. I'll have you, I whispered against his lips. I'll always have you. Jack's apartment had a rooftop. We discovered it a week after he moved in, and it became our place. We'd go up there at sunset, wrapped in blankets as the weather grew colder. and talk about our days, our dreams, our future, tonight. The city sparkled below us, winter had settled in, turning everything crisp and clear. I was bundled in Jack's jacket, which had become more mine than his. He sat behind me, arms wrapped around my waist, chin resting on my shoulder. "I've been thinking," he said. "Dangerous." He laughed. "About Santorini, yeah, about how we met, how it all started." He was quiet. For a moment, I was so lost, Chris. "About how we met, how it all started." He was quiet for a moment. I was so lost, Chris. "And then I met you, and suddenly everything made sense." "You made sense." I turned in his arms. "You made sense too." "Me too. I want to go back," he said softly. "This summer together, retrace our steps, remember how it all began." My heart swelled. "I'd love that." "Good." He kissed my forehead. "Because I already booked the flights." I laughed. "Confident, aren't you, when it comes to you?" "Always." We sat there as the sun set, turning the New York skyline into a painting of shadows and light, and I thought about that day in the Tibre, the moment I'd run into a stranger, and my whole life had changed. I thought about how we'd been naked together, not in the way people might assume, but in the ways that mattered, emotionally vulnerable, honest. I thought about how this gay love story wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was about two people finding each other when they needed it most, about taking a risk on connection, about choosing love even when it was scary. "I love you," I said. Jack smiled. "I love you too." And in that moment, I knew this wasn't a vacation romance. It wasn't a summer fling that faded with the tan lines. This was real. This was forever. This was the story I'd tell for the rest of my life. The story of how I met a stranger on vacation and ended up finding everything I'd been looking for. Epilogue. 1 year later, the Santorini sunset looked exactly as I remembered. Golden lights spilled across the caldera, turning the white buildings amber and the sea molten. Tourists lined the walls of OA, cameras out capturing the magic. Jack and I stood at our spot, the highest point where we'd first said "I love you" a year ago. "Do you remember?" I asked. "Every second." He squeezed my hand. "Best day of my life until today." I turned to look at him. "Why today?" He was smiling, that smile that still made my heart race, the one that had captured me a year ago and never let go. "Because today," he said, dropping to one knee, my breath caught. "Today, I get to ask you something I've been wanting to ask for months." He pulled out a small box, opened it. Inside was a simple silver band. "Chris, you changed my life. You showed me what love could be, what it should be, and I don't want to spend another day without you being mine in every way possible." Tears streamed down my face. "Will you marry me?" "Yes," I sobbed. "God, yes." He stood, slipping the ring onto my finger, and then we were kissing, and people were cheering, and the sun was setting, and everything was perfect. We pulled apart, foreheads touching, grinning like idiots. "So," Jack said, "I guess this answers the question." "What question?" "How we ended up naked together." His eyes sparkled. "Turns out it was just the beginning." I laughed, pulling him close. "The best beginning." And as the sun slipped below the horizon and the sky exploded in color, I knew our story was far from over. It was just getting started. The end. Speech balloon comment. Part 2, if you want to hear about Their wedding, red heart like if this gay love story made your heart flutter. Bell subscribe for weekly LGBTQ+ romance stories that celebrate love, acceptance, and found family sparkles. You just experienced I Met a Stranger on vacation, but how did we end up naked? Together, a true story of emotion, connection, summer romance, and finding love when you least expect it, because sometimes the best love stories start with a stranger. Sparkles. This heartfelt romance celebrates authentic LGBTQ+ love, emotional intimacy, and the journey of self-discovery. Thank you for sharing in Chris and Jack's coming out journey and their beautiful gay love. Thanks for watching.